From teammates trolling you to things in more recent Zombies games, these are the 33 most frustrating things in Zombies. Starting with a frustrating glitch that everyone remembers from Der Riese. If a player had the Wunderwaffe and had Juggernog and then shocked themselves, it would make the player's Juggernog stop working, even if it showed they still had it. So after shocking themselves, the player can go up to a zombie and even if they have Jug, still die in 2 hits. Just imagine how frustrated the player was when they saw this for the first time. But the frustration doesn't stop there, because something frustrating in the newer Zombies games is past round 20 or so, every single zombie has armor on, which is frustrating. I might be exaggerating a bit when I say that, but players can't deny that these newer games have a ton of armored zombies, and they can be frustrating to deal with. Trust me, we're not done with the new Zombies games though, because everyone gets frustrated with how many boss zombies spawn. Once the player gets past round 20 or 30, boss zombies like Manglers spawn so much that it's almost rarer to see a regular zombie, which is frustrating. If you've played Zombies, you've seen a nuke power-up, and these things can actually not be frustrating and can actually be pretty helpful. But there's a scenario where they're incredibly frustrating, and it's when a player accidentally gets one at the start of the round, and they miss out on a ton of points, because grabbing the nuke only gives 400 points, and the player could have got way more if they killed the zombies normally. Now, we all know how frustrating denizens can be on transit, but we also know how frustrating waiting for the rocket test to start is on Der Eisendrache. I want to test which one of these is more frustrating using stats, of course, so I'm gonna time how long it takes for 30 denizens to get on me versus how long I have to wait for the rocket test to start, and whichever one takes longer will officially be the more frustrating thing, according to stats. But while I run these tests, let's look at some more frustrating things in Zombies, and we'll come back to see which takes longer later in the video. On Shadows of Evil, a player's frustrated if they're doing the Easter egg and make it to the end, just to find out that it requires 4 players to complete. Yeah, any Easter eggs that require 4 players to complete are pretty frustrating. Not only are entire Easter eggs frustrating though, but there are also a ton of frustrating Easter egg steps that make players annoyed when they have to do them. Here's a bunch listed on screen, you can pause if you want to read them, but the 2 that I wanted to mention personally are the Der Eisendrache Wisp step and the Blood of the Dead Bird step. If those could get banned from existence, that would be okay with me. Every Zombies player can relate to the frustration of lag in Zombies. Yeah, we've all seen connection interrupted show up on our screens, and it probably made a lot of us so frustrated that it made us contemplate quitting right there on the spot. Something else frustrating that has to do with internet connection though is in the newer Zombies games always having to be online, even for solo games. I get that most people probably don't have an issue with this right now, but the issue comes when if players ever want to revisit Zombies games down the road and the servers have been permanently shut down, they can never play that Zombies game anymore because they would have to be online even to play solo. Plus, if you're lagging out in a solo game, yeah, that's ultimate frustration right there. I'm gonna, just... Anyway, back to some more classic frustrating things in Zombies. How can the SMR not be mentioned? But something even more frustrating than getting the SMR is getting the War Machine. And even more frustrating than that is getting the China Lake. Basically just bad weapons. Bad weapons are always frustrating to get. More classic frustration that every Zombies player knows is the Nova 6 crawlers in Kino der Toten. Especially after round 12 or something, it feels like a switch gets turned and now half of the zombies are Nova 6 crawlers. Because of this, players had to form the high round strat for this map to be in the alley, and one of the big reasons for choosing that area is that no Nova 6 crawlers spawn out there. We're not done with the classic map frustrating things though, because up next is the Buried Witches. Every player has been left frustrated when they've walked into the witch's house with a lot of points, struggled to make it through, and when they finally came out they had very little to show for. And then to make matters worse, they still had to go through the ever frustrating maze and get lost because they wanted to get back to the actual map. But where it gets even more frustrating is when they did all of that but forgot to destroy the fountain in the front of the house. Then it's, well, mega frustrating. Alright, if you thought any of those were frustrating, just wait until you hear about all the frustrating things that players' teammates have done. Like not letting the player get at the mystery box and keep hogging it. That mostly happens because the teammate wants the ray gun, but if someone on the team has no ammo left, they probably need a gun to stay alive. We're not done with teammates frustrating others though, because every player has had that one teammate that keeps stealing their kills. Whether Whether they cut in front of the player right in front of their train, or get the player killed just so they could have more zombies, it's frustrating. What more can you say? It's surprising we've gotten this far in the video and haven't mentioned anything frustrating in transit yet, besides the Denizens test, which is still going on by the way, and the results are almost in, so stay tuned. But every Zombies player gets frustrated by the fire in the map, burning when they walk, burning when they go through the fog, and even burning when they try to jump over the fire. If only there was a buildable that could make players immune from the fire damage. That would be pretty sick. Now, mind you, everything I've talked about so far is super frustrating, but none of them come close to the frustration of the Die Rise elevators. Continuously waiting for these to get perks ruins the flow of the map. Riding the elevators and getting crushed from the ceiling is also really annoying too. At least Treyarch learned from their mistakes, because the Terminus elevator is a well done, nice addition to the map, being able to be activated whenever. Contrary to this though, a not so nice addition is the long bug rounds in Black Ops 6. The frustration begins when it gets past round 30 or so, and these bug rounds start to take really long to complete. They never get super difficult, but it does feel like the player has to waste more ammo in these rounds than the normal ones. At least players get a max ammo afterwards. Another thing on BO6 that frustrates players, depending on who you ask, is the entire point system. I personally don't have a huge issue with it, but I've seen people complain about how they don't get enough points in the early rounds, and in the high rounds they can't spray into a horde to get a ton of points like they could have in BO2 for example. Every Zombies player has been frustrated with Nuketown before, specifically getting Juggernog as the last perk to drop. This is the main criticism of Nuketown, where the perks are random, because if the player gets Pack-a-Punch to drop first, it becomes pretty useless. But despite its frustration, that comes nowhere near these frustrating scenarios I'm about to cover. Scenario number 1 is when the player wants to do something at the end of the round, but when it's time to save the last zombie, they accidentally end the round. This seems super common in Black Ops 6. Like all the older games, it feels like there was a buffer in the last zombie, and in BO6 when you kill a horde, the round just ends, it seems. Or maybe I'm just washed. That could be it too. That's not even close to the frustration a player gets from a teammate going down, but when they try to revive him, they go down as well. Now, most of the time this is an accident on both sides, but I've also seen this done too when the guy who went down was trolling and died in the fire on purpose, so when his teammates try to revive him, they go down as well because they were standing in the fire for too long. It's actually kind of cruel. It gets even more frustrating though when we mention a player going up to the mystery box and a teammate EMPing the box right after they opened it. The player doesn't even know what they could have gotten because they EMP'd it that quick. For all they know, that spin could have been the ray gun. Everyone's been in the frustrating scenario where on Der Eisendrache, the player wants to activate the zero grav in the Undercroft, so they have to stand on the plates. But when they're standing on the plate, they get pushed off by the last zombie they saved, and it now takes double the time to activate the zero grav because they have to constantly dodge the zombie. Another frustrating scenario on Der Eisendrache is when the player is running to teleport, but it says that the rocket test is in progress. It's super funny how when we're waiting for the rocket test at the facility, it never starts, but when we want to teleport, it is always going on. Speaking of the rocket test, let's go back to the test we did at the beginning of the video. So as a reminder, we were testing if 30 denizens would get on me faster than it was to wait for the rocket test to start. And so here's the results. 30 denizens took 4 minutes and 29 seconds to get on me, and the rocket test started in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So officially, the denizens are worse than the rocket test because they took much longer, according to stats of course. But now, before we get to the last most frustrating thing in Zombies, I want to put a couple of honorable mentions on the screen. These didn't need any explanation because they were pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to pause the video and read these, feel free. But now for, in my opinion, the most frustrating thing in all of Call of Duty Zombies, I present to you the mimics in the newer Zombies games. Everyone who's dealt with these things know how frustrating they can be, and if someone ever has more than 4 mimics chasing them, they should just immediately leave the game. I mean, seriously, what is even the goal of these things besides to be really ugly and obviously make every Zombies player really frustrated?